Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome all of you. So today we are going to discuss a very exciting session as far as how to prepare and how to master the world history for UPSC Civil Services examination. Myself, Mr. Ashay Purandare, the Faculty of History, and basically as far as the world history is concerned, UPSC has clearly mentioned in a syllabus that world history is there only for the purpose of main examination. Today everyone in India is facing the COVID crisis. Okay? We are fighting together to overcome this crisis as a united country. Okay? And the crisis or this pandemic which has hit the India, and of course it has hit the world also, but still you will see now in a second phase if the India is facing the problems. Right? So definitely there are enough examples as far as the world history is concerned that we can learn a lot as far as the crisis management was concerned during the past. Right? So in case of UPSC, we have to focus only upon the modern world history which starts from the middle of the 18th century. Okay? But definitely when we are learning the various phases of the world history, just like I gave the example about the COVID that we are battling. Okay? So definitely if you go back to a century back, exactly 103 years ago, the Spanish influenza, it had affected the whole of the Europe. Okay? And in 1918, the Spanish influenza had affected. And Spanish influenza, when it had affected immediately after the First World War. And in the First World War itself, a lot of destruction had taken place. Right? There were so many casualties which the world had witnessed. Till that time, the First World War was the most destructive war which was fought by the humans. And when the humans were grappling, when the whole world committee was grappling how to overcome this crisis, okay? At that time, immediately you will see one of the greatest ever epidemic or pandemic of the world witnessed. Right? And this pandemic grappled the world. And while the world was fighting, the 5 crore lives were lost. Right? While the world was grappling, the 5 crore lives were lost. But still, the world as a whole was able to overcome this pandemic, this human disaster, the communicable disease disaster, and the medical developments were taking place at that time. So obviously the efforts were full on as far as how to overcome this crisis, and the humanity as a whole was able to overcome this crisis within a short period of time. And the destruction which had been caused by the Spanish influenza, within few years, the whole of the Europe, the whole of the Western world, the parts of Asia, they were able to bring the normalcy as far as the overcoming the crisis was concerned. So in this context, the example which I gave about the COVID, and immediately as I link it with the Spanish influenza in 1918, that is exactly 103 years ago. So in that context, basically we have a lot to learn how the pandemic in those times, exactly a century ago or just a little more than a century ago, how it was handled, how basically we were as a human community or we as a human race were able to overcome it. Was it only about the medical discoveries, or was it for the other causes also that we were able to overcome it? So that is what is very important for us. So this is an example which I give you, that how basically the history help us to learn a lot from the past. So since we are discussing the world history and that too in a UPSC context, so obviously I have been coming to the point now that if we have to study the UPSC world history, as I told you, UPSC has mentioned about the world history in a syllabus only for the purpose of main examination. Okay? This first point we have to keep in mind very, very clear, that we have the world history only for the purpose of mains. Okay? That means in a prelims we don't have to study the world history. In a prelims we have the Indian history, the ancient Indian history, the medieval Indian history, and the modern Indian history. But we don't have the world history in a preliminary examination as far as the UPSC civil service exam is concerned. But when we come to UPSC civil service mains, definitely the world history has been given by the UPSC in its syllabus. Okay? And what is the purpose? Because we have seen that the mains is analytical, the mains is descriptive. Okay? So obviously, to have the broader understanding, to have the deeper view about the events which influence not only India but the world as a whole, okay? And how these world events were having their own impact on the Indian history during the modern times. That is the main purpose and a focus for which the UPSC has presented us an opportunity by providing the brief description as far as the world history syllabus is concerned. So when we are going to master, when we are going to professionally tackle the world history for main examination in UPSC, first we have to keep in mind that our approach will be very different. Okay? First thing that we have to keep in mind that our approach is going to be very different. Okay, so this is the very first requirement. What should be our approach? Because when we are discussing about the approach as far as the world history is concerned, then we have to keep in mind that approach of the UPSC as far as the Indian history is concerned is very different. Whether it is a prelims or whether it is a mains, okay? The study of Indian history is very different as far as the civil service exam is concerned in UPSC. Why? In Indian history, as I told you, that if you have to study the Indian history for the purpose of prelims also and the mains also. And always we have to keep in mind in a UPSC, not only for history but for any subject, the approach remains integrated. Okay? The approach remains integrated. So for world history also, our approach is going to be integrated. For world history also, our approach is going to be very integrated. But now the point comes, if there is no world history in the prelims, then how the integrated approach is going to be maintained? Because the world history will be there only for the mains. Okay? This will be a very logical question. And most of the aspirants ask me whenever I discuss the approach and mastering the world history is concerned. So the point is that even though we don't have the world history for prelims, but we have to keep in mind the integrated approach for the world history will always be linked with the Indian history in the main examination. Right? Because in the main examination we have the Indian history also, and in the main examination we have the world history also. So that is very logical, that even though the pre and mains integrated approach may not be required for the study of the world history, but still what we have to keep in mind that the integration and the linkage of world history with the Indian history in a main examination will always be important. Right? Integrated linkage between Indian and world history for mains. This is going to be very, very important for us, because since British were ruling in India as far as the modern Indian history is concerned, so obviously because of the British, India was linked with the world history. Okay? And whatever was happening in Europe and America or Western world, including the other parts of Asia like China, that was going to influence, and that was influencing India also. Okay? And that's why it is very, very important that we have to keep and we have to master these linkages between the Indian history and the world history. So this is a very first approach, this is a very first foundation, right? At how you are going to take a view as far as the Indian history is concerned and the world history is concerned. Okay? So this is a very crucial point. So that is what we have to see, that the integration and the linkage between the Indian history and the world history. Now once it is very clear to us that what basically is required as far as the study of the world history is concerned, then automatically we have to come towards the syllabus. Because unless and until we get the idea and the clear picture about the syllabus for world history in a main examination, we will not be able to go as far as our study is concerned. We will not be able to start our studies. Okay? So if you see the syllabus, again what we have to keep in mind, UPSC has given only a brief idea. UPSC has given only a brief idea about the syllabus. UPSC has not exhaustively mentioned the whole syllabus of the world history. But still, first we have to take a look as far as the syllabus is concerned. Then we can easily go for dissecting the syllabus, that how basically UPSC can ask the questions. Okay, so that is what we will see now. So I hope that this is very clear and how we have to approach as far as the world history is concerned. So now we will see the syllabus. So if you see the syllabus, then UPSC has mentioned first about Industrial Revolution. Okay. So UPSC is very clear that candidates are given the hints and the criteria from where they should start the study of the world history. Okay. So UPSC is very clear that it wants the study of world history from the middle of the 18th century, and Industrial Revolution is a starting point from around 1750 to 1760. England witnessed the Industrial Revolution, and this is from where we have to start the modern history. Why? Because Industrial Revolution was one of the most important event to have taken place in a human history, because that actually transformed the whole feudal society, whole feudal economy, the whole feudal ideology, right? The whole feudal political systems the world over into the modern democratic systems, the modern economy based on modern science and technology, the modern society based on modern thoughts and views. Right? And of course the transformation started first in England, then it spread to the different parts of the Europe and America, and from there it came to Asia, and then it went to Oceania also, Australia, New Zealand and so on. So this is the case. So from that perspective, the UPSC has mentioned about the Industrial Revolution as a starting point. Then UPSC has mentioned about colonization and decolonization. Then UPSC has mentioned about colonization and decolonization. And here we have to keep in mind, UPSC, if it has given this aspect or a topic for us, it has given very carefully. Why? Because the very origin of the Industrial Revolution, the very rise and growth of Industrial Revolution in England and its latter spread to the other European countries or whole Western world is clearly associated with the colonization and decolonization. Because this whole Industrial Revolution, it was based upon the natural resources. Okay, plus human resources. This whole Industrial Revolution was based upon natural resources and human resources. So these natural resources and human resources were available aplenty. They were available in vast amount, right, or vast proportion into Africa, Asia and South America. Okay? And these are the countries who ultimately witness colonization, okay? And later the decolonization. Since these countries were colonized, some countries were colonized politically, some countries were colonized economically. Because of that colonization, the industrial revolution of the England and later the other parts of Europe, okay? That industrial revolution was able to keep its pace and growth. Okay? Because if you see the climate and geography of the Europe, then you will see that Europe basically comes under a temperate climate or a sub-temperate climate, and that's why the natural resources in the form of minerals, energy resources, they are very limited as far as the Europe is concerned. Okay? The Europe also has always maintained its population at a lesser level compared to the population of the Asia, Africa and South America. So human resources were also limited. Okay? But Europe had a capital. Europe had a capital which is required as a part of investment, to start industry. Okay? Europe had a capital, the initial capital which is required to start the industry as a part of investment. So its own investment in the form of money or a capital and the natural plus human resources of the Asia, Africa and South America, okay? Which were secured by the England and other European countries later, okay? Through the colonization and imperialism. Why? Because when you come to have the resources in the countries like Africa or a continent like Africa, South America and Asia, okay? And the different countries within these continents, and we have to keep in mind that no country is directly going to give or going to part with their own resources. Right? No country is going to give or part with their own resources. So obviously, first you will come as a traders. First you will come for a trade and commerce or business activity. And once you get the hold of the situation, the social conditions, the political conditions, okay, and the cultural conditions as well as economic conditions which are prevailing in a colonial continents of Africa, Asia and South America and the different countries they are in, then the European countries gradually started their political dominance. They got the idea, they got the hold of the weaknesses which the countries from Africa, Asia and South America were suffering. And what advantage these countries had? These countries had an advantage of science and technology. Right? These countries also had an advantage of science and technology. And this science and technology was lacking. Okay? This science and technology was lacking as far as the Africa, Asia and South America was concerned. And that was the ultimate reason that this colonization was achieved by the European countries through imperialism. And this imperialism was possible due to the science and technological developments which gave an edge and advancement to the European countries with lesser population and limited resources, okay, over the continents of Africa, Asia and South America, which were better equipped in the terms of population, which were vastly ahead in terms of natural resources. But these countries and the continents failed to harness their natural and human resources, and they were subjugated by the countries of Europe and later even America also. And this is what the UPSC is expecting from us as far as the syllabus is concerned. So we have the Industrial Revolution, we have the colonization, we have the decolonization. Okay? In a decolonization, we will see that around the middle of the 20th century, after Second World War, how the colonies all over the world which were taken over by the European countries, United States, okay, even Japan, the advanced Asian nation or industrial Asian nation, okay, how gradually these colonies were decolonized with the advent of United Nation. With the advent of United Nation. Okay. And United Nations started. Okay. Whereby it was now discussed at the world level that the subjugation of any particular country, however small or weak it was, right, by any other country, however big and powerful it was, will not be accepted. The free and fair principle as far as the self-governance, self-rule, the complete independence, okay, and the decolonization was accepted after the Second World War. So how that happened, what were the factors, that we will have to see as a part of process of decolonization. Okay. Then UPSC has mentioned about 2 world wars. And a redrawing of national boundary. Okay. UPSC has mentioned about 2 world wars and a redrawing of the national boundary. So obviously we will see here also that the 2 world wars and their consequences or impact had affected the whole world in the last century, that is 20th century. Okay. Because we have to see that whatever we are witnessing in a 21st century, all kinds of modern development, scientific revolutions, we are witnessing the 4th industrial revolution, we are in the age of artificial intelligence. We have basically, as we discussed at the start also, even though COVID is there, but humans are getting the victory. They are overcoming each and every natural crisis. We are trying to overcome the natural disasters. We are trying to overcome epidemics, diseases, okay, and so on. As a part of principle of determinism, we are trying to control the nature. We are trying to compete with nature and establish our dominance over the nature. So automatically it has its own fallacies also. But the point is that positive atmosphere and a positive approach is there as far as the human race is concerned. And this process basically had already started, as we discussed, in 18th century. Then it had gained the pace in 19th century. Then in that competition to overcome the nature, the competition had started among the different countries also. The competition had started among the different countries also. And as a result of that, when the high ambitions and the high aspirations of each and every country were clashing up, that resulted into world wars. And this happened not only once but twice. This happened not only once but twice. For the first war, it had a long background, but for the second war, it had a very short background. And obviously these 2 wars completely changed the whole world, the very outlook of the whole world. Today also we normally say that if the 3rd World War occurs, that will occur not for the purpose of territory, not for the purpose of political or economic control, but it will happen because of the climate change, food security, the water security. The 3rd World War especially is going to be a water war, because the whole world with a increasing population, the population explosion, which may turn into a population disaster, the whole world is witnessing the food and water security crisis. The basic survival needs of the humans are again under the threat, despite having all kinds of modern development. So this situation we are witnessing in the 21st century. But the whole process I mentioned that it had started from 18th century, gained the pace in 19th century. It showed its destructive colors in the first half of the 20th century. It showed its healing colors in the second half of the 20th century, because whatever was destroyed within 2 world wars as a part of the first half of the 20th century, all the wounds were healed in the last 70-75 years. And then again we are in a 21st century, whereby we are witnessing a different crisis right since last year, and we are grappling with the crisis. This is the point. So that's why the world wars and the redrawing of the national boundary, right? And in fact here, as I mentioned, that we have the integrated approach. World history is linked with the Indian history. So very independence of India and a very change in the boundary of India is also associated somewhere directly or indirectly with the world wars, right? And that is what we have to study as far as the UPSC is concerned, right? So that's why this is also a very important topic. And then last, the UPSC has mentioned about the three important economic, social and political philosophies, right, which the modern world witness. As I told you, that the whole world gradually transformed from feudalism into modernism, right? And especially the economic aspects, okay, which witness the economic change, the very patterns of economic change, and the very so-called free economy, market economy emerged. So that was associated with the emergence of three different philosophies of the economics. First is capitalism, second is socialism, third is the communism. Okay, so this capitalism, socialism, communism, they are basically economic philosophies. Okay, but apart from being economic, they are also political and social. They are also political and social philosophies. Okay? So as I mentioned, they are basically the economic philosophies, but apart from being economic, they are also the political and social philosophies. So how these philosophies emerge? Right? What is the difference between these philosophies? What are their political features? What are their social and economic angles? All things we have to study as far as the world history syllabus is concerned. Okay. So this is like a overview as far as how the syllabus has been given by the UPSC. But as I have mentioned, this is only an indicative syllabus. This is only an indicative syllabus. Already I have been mentioning here the different aspects and dimensions about the syllabus. But if you see further, if you take a look as far as the past year question papers of the UPSC is concerned, then we will get the idea that syllabus is not as brief as the UPSC has mentioned in a notification. Syllabus is exhaustive. Okay? Syllabus is exhaustive, but that doesn't mean that we should strike a fear in our minds, right? Because ultimately world history is just a part of the overall history. Okay? And the UPSC basically has given a particular weightage as far as the world history is concerned. We will discuss about that later. But according to that weightage only, the syllabus basically is framed. But the syllabus has many dimensions. As I told you, the indicative aspects of the syllabus, they will have their forward linkages and they will have their backward linkages also. Okay? The indicative syllabus will have its own forward linkages and own backward linkages. That's why we will have to go beyond the current syllabus, which UPSC has mentioned in an official notification. And when we study the past year question papers, we will clearly get the idea and automatically get the idea that not only these aspects of the syllabus, but apart from these aspects also, the UPSC has asked the questions. Because the very aspects and features which have been mentioned in this syllabus, they have their own linkages, their own connections and implications, okay, own backgrounds, own dimensions and own consequences or own significance as far as the other important events of the world history are concerned. But as I mentioned, the point is that UPSC has kept or UPSC has referred to starting point as a middle of the 18th century only. That means UPSC is not going to ask any events which happened in a 16th, 17th century or 15th century or a so-called medieval Europe. The brief background may come. Okay? The brief background may come. So because of this, we have to approach the world history in a very sequential way, a very focused way, and we have to keep in mind that overall also you will see the world history doesn't have much facts, and that is heartening for us. Because normally when we discuss about history, when we think even about history, the first thing that comes to our mind is that history is factual. Yes, history is factual, but the purpose of history is that history is a critical analysis of the fact. In the context of UPSC, what UPSC expects from us, the history, not the factual history, but the very critical analysis of the fact is expected by UPSC. And fortunately for us, the very events of the world history, they are so flowing and they are so sequential and chronological that the facts are less and there is enough scope as far as the analysis is concerned. The cause and effect relationship we can easily bring out as far as the world history syllabus is concerned. So because of that, basically the study is going to be very, very interesting. As you will start preparing, you will start generating the interest after interest. Then you will think that I should not leave the book. You will think that I will complete the whole topic as far as the world history syllabus is concerned. Once you complete the whole topic, then you will feel, no, I will like to go further. This topic is so interesting, so definitely the next topic will be much more interesting. So today itself, I will like to go for the next topic, and so on and so on. You will get immersed into that history. You will go back like a time machine, and you will find yourself in that journey as far as the whole human race was concerned. And how in that journey, how the India was also traveling. As an Indian, you will also feel and you will also enjoy that process, and that will help you to understand and permanently keep that history into your mind. There is no need to mug up the facts. There is no need to remember the facts. Okay? The very history has been presented in such a way that easily and gradually as well as automatically you will be able to master this world history. This is the biggest advantage that the world history has, just like Indian history also. So now I will come to the exhaustive aspects of the syllabus, which will give everyone the idea that how the things are shaped and how the UPSC is expecting a multi-dimensional view from us, a comprehensive and holistic look from us. Yet UPSC is sticking to the syllabus. So that is what we have to see. So now we will see that how the syllabus will be dissected, how the UPSC has already asked the questions, and how possibly it will ask the questions. That means the topics and the areas from where the questions will come. And while discussing this, you will automatically get the idea that how the things are interlinked and how and why we should study that. So it is very interesting. Just we will see now. So based on past year question papers, based on past year question papers, we will get the actual syllabus and the dissection of the syllabus and the areas from where UPSC asking the question. Exam oriented topics or areas from where questions are being asked. So see, since we had a first topic as a revolution, once we had a first topic as a industrial revolution. Okay. So this industrial revolution was the revolution which took place in terms of science and technology and in the very economic or manufacturing terms. The very process of production, the finished goods purchase, sale, distribution was changed. That transformation came. And when we say revolution, the things that happen in a very short period of time, they are called as a revolution. The events, things and processes which take place over a longer period of time, that is called as a revolution. So this is the case. So since UPSC has mentioned industrial revolution, so along with the industrial revolution, UPSC has also included as a hidden aspects of the syllabus, whereby we have witnessed the questions in the past years, the so-called political revolutions. So we will get a matrix of the 4 political revolutions connected with industrial revolution. Okay. So UPSC has asked the questions. First is about American War of Independence. Okay. First is about American War of Independence, about which the UPSC has asked the syllabus. Why? Because the oldest written constitution of the world came as far as the American Revolution was concerned, or American War of Independence was concerned. Okay? The very England which had witnessed the Industrial Revolution, it was forced by the people of America to grant independence to the people of America. And at that time, America was not an industrial country. America was a backward country. And England was an industrial country. And before America, England had a democracy. The very first modern democracy of the world, or the oldest democracy of the world, is England. It adopted a parliamentary democracy model in AD 1600, and plus it also had an industrial revolution also. So economically also it was now going to be the sole powerhouse of the world. Yet the people of America, by their sheer resolve, the sheer will, the willpower, they forced the England, the most powerful country of the world, to give independence or a grant independence to the people of America. And then America brought its own constitution, the very famous Bill of Rights, which brought the concept of fundamental rights in the world. And that was brought in 1789. That was brought in 1789. Okay. And in the same year, this very American War of Independence gave an inspiration to the emergence of the second revolution, French Revolution. Okay. The American War of Independence gave the background and the inspiration for the French Revolution. And this French Revolution continued for almost a century. Okay. Every time the revolution was taking place, it was witnessing some positive aspects. Again, you will see the reactions were coming up as far as the revolution was coming up. And in that process, you will see it took almost a century to ultimately France becoming a republic. Okay. Revolution started in 1789. But France became a republic only in 1870-71. Only after a century, France became a republic. So this journey of almost 100 years, that is also very, very crucial, because it was shaping the Europe and its political future in a different way. Okay? That's why the French Revolution becomes very, very important. Okay? So the French Revolution and its consequences, okay, in the form of 1830 and 1848 revolutions. Okay. Then, as a consequence of the French Revolution, unification of Germany and Italy, as a consequence of a French Revolution and as a reaction to the French Revolution, as a reaction to French Revolution, we will witness the unification of the Germany and Italy, the two countries. So when the revolution was taking place, when the democratic winds were flowing, there were equally and opposite reactions that were coming up from the other countries of the Europe. So the unification of the Germany and Italy, that will show that it was a reaction against the democracy. This is what we have to see. Then in between, in 1815, 1799 to 1815, we have the rise of Napoleon. The rise of Napoleon and Napoleonic War. The rise of Napoleon and a Napoleonic War. Why? Because Napoleon also, he himself was a product of this French Revolution. But at the same time, Napoleon was also not interested in democracy. He himself was an autocrat. And that's why from 1799 to 1815, Napoleon had tormented the whole of the Europe. Right? And the whole future, the political and military future of the Europe was going to change. In 1815, when the Napoleon was defeated, 1815, Napoleon was defeated. And as a defeat of this Napoleon, Congress of Vienna emerged. Okay, the Congress of Vienna emerged. Vienna is the capital of the Austria. Vienna is the capital of the Austria, and the Congress of Vienna emerged. And what was the purpose of this Congress of Emerja? What was the purpose of this Congress of Vienna? To have the perpetual peace in Europe. Okay? To have the perpetual peace in Europe, the political and military peace. So this was also one of the consequences as far as the French Revolution was concerned. So along with French Revolution, we will have so many sub aspects. We will have so many sub aspects and subtopics which are very, very important, that will be asked by UPSC. That's why I have been mentioning the syllabus given by the UPSC in a world history is indicative, but practically it is very exhaustive. But despite being the fact that it is exhaustive, it doesn't mean that it is unmanageable. It is definitely manageable, and that is what I am telling you, that how we have to manage that syllabus, which areas we have to study, which areas we have to leave. So these all areas which I am mentioning, that we have to study. Automatically the other things will be left out, and our time will be saved. Our study will be directed in a very professional way. Our study will be a well guided and a well focused, a well directed study. We are not going to deviate now. This we have to keep in mind. Then, so after this French and American Revolution, the other events which are important, that is Bolshevik Revolution or Russian Revolution. Okay, we have Bolshevik or a Russian Revolution. So as I mentioned, that these all revolutions as a part of political revolutions, they are somewhere connected with the industrial revolution, which is the economic revolution. Okay, but at the same time, as a part of this political revolution, this Bolshevik revolution is connected with socialism and communism. As a political plus economic philosophy. As a political plus economic philosophy. As we discussed the dimensions of the socialism, communism and capitalism. So this Bolshevik revolution, it had emerged because of the very socialism and communism as a political and economic philosophy. That means these socialism and communism, they are like a background as far as this political and economic philosophy were concerned. And because of this background or these factors, the Bolshevik revolution occurred. But these are not the only factors due to which this Bolshevik revolution occurred. There were many internal factors also. There were so many internal factors also which were responsible for this Bolshevik revolution. And at a basic level, we will have to study these factors also. Apart from these two factors, these are broad international factors, but these are two. There are so many internal factors also, and that led to the so-called Bolshevik revolution. And this Bolshevik revolution occurred in the middle of First World War. Okay, this Bolshevik revolution occurred in the middle of the First World War. And after First World War, obviously we will see the growth of communism and socialism. After First World War. Okay, and even in India, we will witness the growth of communism and socialism as a result of the First World War. Even in India, we will witness the rise of communism and socialism, the advent of communist and socialist ideas in India also. Because at the time the British government and the British Empire was ruling the India as a colony, and Britain was following the capitalist system of the economy and a capitalist philosophy as far as the political system was also concerned. So because of that, when the communism and socialism came in India, or they arrived in India, India was going to witness so many changes internally also and from the international perspective also. So that's why this very Bolshevik or Russian revolution, it had a long-term consequences throughout the world, including India. That point we have to keep in mind. And then the fourth revolution will be Chinese Revolution. (1911–1949). The Chinese Revolution, and this was also a communist revolution. Here you will see the socialism was missing. Here you will see the socialism was missing. It was like a communist revolution. It was like a communist revolution, and it was one of the consequences of the Russian or Bolshevik revolution also. And again, as I told you, the very factors of colonialism, were responsible. Plus the role of European country. Role of European countries. If the Chinese revolution occurred, that was mainly because of the Bolshevik revolution also. It was because of the very factors of colonization which were visible in China, and also the role of European countries. The very role of European countries within China and from outside China, that also brought this Chinese Revolution. And Chinese Revolution was also one of the impact or consequence of Second World War. Okay? The very Second World War was partially responsible for India getting independence. Similarly, this very Second World War was also responsible for China getting independence. Okay? And China emerging as a communist republic. China emerging as a communist republic. Okay, this point we have to keep in mind. So that's why, as I have mentioned, the very first, the term industrial revolution, that it will go beyond the very economic revolution and it will include all the four major revolutions as far as the syllabus is concerned. So from that dimension, the UPSC has asked the questions and it will continue to ask the questions. Okay, this is the point. Then next we will see again the very similar factors are related with the other aspects of the syllabus also. So every time the interesting aspects will be coming up, okay, that we have to keep in mind. That always we will be on our toes, that what will be the next, what will happen next. That kind of curiosity has been maintained by the UPSC as far as the world history is concerned. So this is what we have to see in next aspect also. So as we mentioned, next aspect, colonization, okay, and decolonization. So obviously colonization we have to see the very context of Renaissance in 15th century Europe, okay? 15th to 18th century Europe, okay? Renaissance and Enlightenment. Okay? So the role of Renaissance and Enlightenment in a 15th to 18th century Europe was responsible for the colonization. Okay? Then, as we discuss about navigation discoveries, navigation and naval discoveries. And there was a competition for naval supremacy. Okay, so on these aspects also the questions will be asked, that is, what were the factors responsible for the colonization. Okay, so the question can cover all factors also, or on a particular specific factor itself a new question can come, that what was the role of the Renaissance and Enlightenment of the 15th to 18th century Europe in bringing the colonization. Okay, this point we have to keep in mind. Okay, then colonization is also associated with socio-political and cultural weaknesses in Asia, Africa and South America. So these aspects will also be asked, as far as the overall issue of the colonization is concerned. Okay, that one also we have to keep in mind. Then in a colonization itself, the role of mercantilism, okay, the role of mercantilism or free trade. This factor was also going to boost the colonization. Okay? this factor was also going to boost the colonization. The free trade policies which were brought by the countries like England, right? The free trade policies which were brought by the countries like England, and then with the help of all these factors, they were going to bring imperialism. Okay, political plus military. Political plus military imperialism they were going to bring, and that was the reason that ultimately the colonization occurred. That was the reason that ultimately the colonization occurred. So that is what the UPSC is going to ask us. When we come to decolonization, same things we have to see. The role of or influence of First and Second World War. Okay. That was going to determine the process of decolonization. Okay. The very process of decolonization was going to be determined by the First and Second World War. Okay. And that was going to be very, very crucial for the context of the whole world. And that's why the UPSC has mentioned the syllabus. Redrawing of the national boundaries. Okay. Redrawing of the national boundaries. Okay. So very emergence of independent countries. Asia, Africa, Southeast Asia, and South America. Okay, that was mainly because of the so-called First and Second World War, and that decolonization brought the independence of the countries of Asia, Africa, and South America, along with Southeast Asia. Right? And that led to the redrawing of the boundaries. When we say one of the consequences of the First and Second War was a redrawing of the boundaries, so automatically this was mainly because of the things, right, which happened. And obviously these aspects are going to applicable for First and Second World War. Okay. Treaty of Versailles. Okay. And League of Nations. Okay. So as a part of the First World War and its consequences, we will see that Treaty of Versailles and emergence of League of Nations. Okay. These were also going to determine this very process of redrawing of the national boundaries. Okay. So this point is very, very crucial. Then, when we come to this First and Second World War, the backgrounds of both war are very crucial. Okay? The backgrounds of the both war are very crucial. Okay? So for First World War, we have background as a new imperialism. A race for Africa. Okay. So as a background for the First World War, we have all things. First, we have new imperialism. How it emerged? Right? What was that new imperialism? How the race for Africa emerged? That race for Africa is also called as a scramble for Africa. Okay? How the militarization of the Europe influenced and ultimately brought the world to the First World War. Right? All these aspects UPSC will be asking us. It has already asked, it will be asking us. Similarly, we have the background for the Second War also. Okay. So after First World War, the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations were established. But this very Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations became one of the factors or reasons for the emergence of Second World War. Why? Because after the First World War, Germany was a defeated country, and the Treaty of Versailles was imposed upon Germany. Right? The Treaty of Versailles was imposed upon Germany, and that treaty was too much discriminatory. Right? The Treaty of Versailles was too much discriminatory, and obviously the people of Germany and other defeated countries, they were facing the consequences of this indiscriminate and unequal Treaty of Versailles, and that gave the rise to the aggressive forces. Which are these aggressive forces? Nazism in Germany and fascism in Italy. Right? The very rise of the aggressive forces of Nazism in Germany and fascism in Italy, the very anti-democratic forces of the Europe, and how they became aggressive, how they became strongly rooted into the ideology of the respective societies as far as the German and Italian countries were concerned. Right? And how this Treaty of Versailles, how the very double standards of the League of Nations. Right? League of Nations was the first version of the United Nations. So how these countries were discriminated and how they decided that they are going to take their own revenge as far as their defeat in First World War was concerned. Right? That aspects we have to see. These factors were becoming like a background for the emergence of the Second World War. Okay? Then there was a Great Depression also. Okay? For Second World War, we also have few more factors. Okay? Great Depression also. Okay, so because of that, the rise of Nazism and fascism, the question will be asked separately. Okay? Nazi and fascist ideology, separate questions. Okay, then how far Treaty of Versailles responsible for Second World War. Okay, this is also a typical question which UPSC asks. Okay, this is also a typical question the UPSC asks. So again, the factors combined, a single question can be asked, or on each of these separate factors, separate questions can be asked. So that's why in a main broad topics we have the subtopics, right? And each topic is linked with the other topic in a very complex yet clear cut way, and that is our objective, that we have to decipher that how these linkages are there, how these linkages have to be harnessed by us, right? And how we can professionally handle and master the whole world history. Same will be the case after Second World War. Consequences of the Second World War are also equally important. So as we mentioned there, independence of the countries, Asia, Africa, South America, decolonization. Okay? So both ways we have to see. When we are going to study the decolonization, then also the Second World War is going to come, or First World War is going to come. And when we are studying the consequences of the Second World War, again the outcome or a consequence will be decolonization. So both ways we have to study, and that will be very easy for us. That will help us to master and command the multi-dimensional approach. We will be able to command this multi-dimensional approach only through this process. So apart from the approach and syllabus, I am telling you how we have to study. What should be our strategy of the study? This is also the whole strategy of the study as far as the world history is concerned. That is very crucial for us. Then we have the long-term consequences, which even touch the 90s, and that is, you will see, Cold War era. NAM as a foreign policy. By India. India will always remain important. As I told you, Indian history will always be linked with the world history, because after independence, as an independent country, India has been playing a role of a responsible and a very active member of the United Nations. And that's why the NAM itself was an indication how India basically wanted to establish itself as a true global force, and how India wanted to establish itself as a peaceful country and a world leader. And today we are actually going towards that fruition as far as the world leadership is concerned. So world history will be linked with the international relations also. So when you study the world history, you will be able to master international relations also. You will be able to master the topics of Indian society also. You will be able to master topics of Indian society. World history linked with international relation. GS paper 2. International relations is a topic given by UPSC in GS paper 2. And world history is also linked with society aspect of GS paper 1. Okay. World history itself is a part of GS paper 1. World history itself is a part of a GS paper 1. Okay. So again you will see world history will be linked with there also. So there are multiple linkages of the world history with different topics and syllabus of the UPSC, going beyond our history and world history. Okay. This is the case. World history is also very crucial for essay. World history is very crucial for writing essay. Okay. World history is very crucial for writing essay also, and that is mainly because the consequences of the very Second World War, they are opening up the new dimensions, and the different aspects of the UPSC syllabus going beyond the world history, that will be covered from here also. That's why I am giving the examples. Then we will have the very disintegration of Europe. (1985-1991), okay? And especially USSR. Okay? Then multipolar world. Was gone, and US emerged as a superpower. Emergence of US as a superpower. Okay, US emerged as a both economic and a political superpower. But along with that, we also have European Union and Euro as a single currency. Okay? We also have European Union and Euro as a single currency as a consequence as far as the post Second World War was concerned. And the whole things were taking place under the umbrella of United Nations. Okay. Emergence of World Bank and IMF. Okay. Emergence of World Bank, IMF, and the different organizations within the United Nations. The World Bank, IMF itself becomes a part as far as the UN is concerned. Then we have the World Trade Organization. We have United Nations Human Rights Commission. We have the UNESCO also. Okay. We also have the UNICEF. We have the United Nations Development Program. So UN and its agencies, that itself became the consequence as far as the end of Second World War is concerned. And how after Second World War these things are shaping the world. Okay. World has become unipolar after disintegration of the USSR. But now again you will see with the emergence of the 21st century, the world is emerging as a multipolar. Why? Because there are so many countries which are challenging the hegemony as far as the US is concerned. Countries like China, Japan, India, Australia, Brazil, South Africa, Russia, all these countries are trying to challenge the US hegemony, and because of that the various groupings are coming up. The very consequence of the Second World War was the emergence of Group 8, G8, the group of most developed countries of the world, which were 8 in number. Later on, Russia was excluded from that group and it became G7. But because of that, the other groupings started to come. The countries who are not fully developed, the countries who are developing countries, countries who are called as the middle income countries. Okay? These countries are now forming the groupings in the form of G20, G77. Okay? And we have Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We have the ASEAN, Southeast Asian Countries Association. ASEAN countries, or Association of the Southeast Asian Nations. Then we have the SAARC within South Asia, where India is the most important power, the so-called Big Brother. And then we have the other countries in the form of Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. We have the Afghanistan, Bhutan, Nepal, and so on. Maldives is there. So these all groupings and international organizations, they are coming up as a consequence of the very culmination of the world history after Second World War, and that truly makes the world history as a multi-dimensional history. Okay? That truly makes the world history as a multi-dimensional history. Okay? All encompassing aspect, and it is a very fluid process. Okay? It is a process with a complete flow, a smooth flow, steady flow. Okay? That's why we have to keep in mind in a UPSC, if the UPSC is going to ask the questions as far as the world history is concerned, or if the UPSC had asked the questions, these questions are going to be analytical. Okay? No factual questions. There will be direct questions. There will be direct questions. Okay? I will show you nature of questions. Okay? Nature of questions asked by UPSC. Okay? Direct but analytical. And second is critical and complex. Okay? UPSC will ask the questions in both ways. Many questions will be direct. Just I have mentioned that how far the Treaty of Versailles was responsible for Second World War. We have to justify. Okay? So we will have to write the very factors which led to the emergence of Treaty of Versailles, how the provisions of the Treaty of Versailles, they were discriminatory against a single country, that is Germany, and how these very discriminatory factors and the double standards in the implementation of the Treaty of Versailles led to the emergence of Nazism in Germany. Okay? This is what the question is expecting from us for 10 marks. Okay? And 10 marks means 200 words. Okay? 10 marks means 200 words. Or sometimes it may be 150 words also. Sometimes it may be 150 words also. So these are direct but analytical question. So this is a direct but analytical question. Sometimes a complex and critical question can also be asked. Sometimes a complex and a critical question can also be asked. Like if you have to see that very rise of democratic forces in Europe and America in the middle of the 18th century. Okay, in the middle of the 18th century, not only saw reactionary forces getting united and strengthened, but it also gave a rise to the rise of nationalism and jingoistic imperialism. Okay? Analyze or examine. So that kind of complex question can also come. This is a critical and complex question, which can also be asked, and it is asked for 12.5 marks, 250 words. If it is asked for 12.5 marks, it will be asked for 250 words. So we will have different types of questions. 5 marks question, example is like a October Revolution. Okay, then we have 8 marks question, Congress of Vienna. Okay, then we can have 10 marks question. 5 marks question will be there for 50 to 60 words. 8 marks question for 100 to 125 words. Okay, I am mentioning you the nature of questions also, the type of questions which UPSC has asked and how it can ask in the future also. Then different types in the form of word limit and marks. That is also very crucial for us in a study and preparation. For a strategy, these are very important things. Then we have 10 marks question, we have 150 or 200 words. Okay, like as we saw, how far Treaty of Versailles was responsible for Second World War. Okay, this is a 10 mark question with 150 or 200 words. And then ultimately, as I mentioned you, the very complex question, the very rise of democratic forces in Europe and America in the middle of the 18th century, not only saw the reactionary forces getting united and strengthened, okay, but it also gave the rise to the rise of nationalism and jingoistic imperialism. Analyze or examine, 12.5 marks or 250 words. Okay? So these are different types in which the UPSC has been asking the questions, and the UPSC will continue to ask the questions. Okay? So these points are very, very crucial to us. So in today's session, a very exciting session, we have see all aspects of the world history, and how to approach the world history, why the study of world history is important, as I mentioned, through COVID crisis and its connection with Spanish influenza 103 years back, how we can learn from that, because history is ultimately the study of past. Now why we study this past? To understand the problems which were faced by our earlier generations, how they cope with the problems, what were the mistakes committed by them, how we can avoid these mistakes, and how we can shape a better society, how we can shape a better world, how we can write a better history for our upcoming generations. That is the purpose for which the history is studied. And in that context, I explain everything. The very approach of the world history, the very syllabus as far as the world history is concerned, what are the different perspectives and dimensions, what is the syllabus which has been given by UPSC, and how actually the UPSC has asked the syllabus in a very exhaustive way. And then I told you the clear-cut linkages in the context of Indian history and the world history, and how after the Second World War, where the UPSC stops, still UPSC is asking the questions. In the syllabus, UPSC has stopped after Second World War, but practically it is asking the questions after Second World War also. And how, because of that, as I have mentioned, how the world history is linked with international relations, GS paper 2, Indian society, GS paper 1, essay as well as interview. So it makes like a holistic study as far as the world history is concerned. And then we have also discussed the different types of questions which can be asked and which have been asked. The type of questions based on their criticality, and the type of question based on marks and their word limit. Now I have given the example of each and every question also, different angles and different aspects, and how we can approach and prepare the world history. So I am sure and very confident that all of you must have got the wholesome idea, the comprehensive idea, the holistic idea about the world history. This session, I am sure, must have definitely ignited an interest in a history as a whole, and a world history in particular from the perspective of UPSC among all of you. Even if you are not from history background, or you may not be from history background, but still as a curious, educated citizen of this country, this session must have ignited a clear-cut interest, a clear-cut passion and a focus for the study of world history. And since all dimensions I have covered and I have given you all the strategy, so definitely now you can master the world history. So with this, I will like to take the leave of all of you as of now, but I am sure that in the future also we will continue our interaction during this tested COVID times, as far as how to dissect and how to approach and how to master the whole UPSC. Today it was a world history context. Some other day it will be some other aspect of the history, and I am sure in a very near future I will again get an opportunity to interact with you all. So with this, I will like to take leave from all of you. Be safe, be positive, ensure your own safety also, and safety of everyone in a society. Collectively, we have to fight the COVID, and we have to emerge victorious, not only in this war, but also in war as far as mastering the UPSC is concerned. And all of you have the potential to become IAS officer and to become the future builder of this nation. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Thank you.